This podcast represents the individual opinions of Dr. Dimitri Bick, Dr. Stefan de Graaf, and the guests. It should not be taken as medical advice or an establishment of standard of care. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements. Please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Please don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe, but more importantly, leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. Reviews not only help us grow listeners, but also help us grow as a show, improve our content, and make us better.
I wanna be a billionaire so freaking bad. Buy all of the things I never had. I wanna be on the cover of Forbes magazine, smiling next to Oprah and the Queen.
Yeah. So I don't know that this episode is going to be I don't know how to describe this particular episode at all. Morbid.
I don't know, man.
Perhaps a little morbid.
Are we all mourning? Are we all mourning some losses or?
All right, look, before we even get into this, I want to point out that we have someone playing hurt today.
You know what?
And we all thank you for your service today.
Working while injured.
That you're working while injured. You do have a
Topic
cold
for another day.
And we appreciate you being here.
It was
while
the
you
peer
were
pressure.
Injured. It's your Michael Jordan flu game.
Yes.
Way to go.
And, yeah. So before we even get into that, before we even get into the Bruno Mars and Travis McCoy song that we just played, and by the way, I have no idea when I saw the video for this, and that's just how I know I'm old. I couldn't distinguish between who was Bruno Mars and who was Travis McCoy.
And that's why you speak for yourself.
I had to actually Google that. And that makes me a sad person, and I know that makes me very old.
You got to get with the times.
But now I know.
Bruno Mars is always going to be the shortest one in the room. So that's our difference with Bruno
Shortest
Mars.
one with the style. That's him.
That's not true because I'm always the shortest one in the room.
I think you're actually taller than me, though.
Am I?
I think so.
Okay. Okay. Well, then you're the shortest one in the room. Apparently, Bruno Mars. Apparently, now I'm going to remember this is the guy with the hat.
Yes, the guy with the hat
and the voice. Anyway, this sub story, which is, I guess, the reason we played that song. Yes.
I don't know. At the risk of saying the wrong thing, I don't even know where to start. Right?
It's obviously it's all over the media. It's all over social media. It's all over the news. We have been consumed.
Yeah. Something happened, it's bad, and it's just, what is it, 5 people in total? There was
Should we just recap it for the people that are like living in a rock?
Yeah,
again?
just you can, if you don't know what we're talking about, so here's a synopsis, we'll call that, right?
Yeah, go for it.
So I don't know the names, maybe I should have learned the names, but I think there was 4 people total. I think one was in with a kid. They had enough money.
It was 5.
It was 5 with the captain, right? And then 4 guests, I guess, 4 passengers, let's say. They had enough money to say, when somebody say they have FU money, so they have enough FU money to say, you know what, sounds like a great idea to get in that Coca-Cola can and get to the bottom of the ocean, just to see the Titanic, just to see the Titanic in the bottom, and as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I've seen it on TV. I've seen documentaries. I've seen videographers, go down and film the remnants of the Titanic, right? They've seen cameras. They've seen, if you call it, I don't know, if somebody was filming it down there, but why do you have to be in proximity of the wreckage of the ship just to see it? That's what I didn't understand.
Well,
we've all seen
premise.
It, right?
The premise that I understand that they went down there for is for scientific research to determine how the ship is being, I guess, rusting or it's changing based on the oceans.
There's supposed to be like a metal-eating bacteria that's basically
correct, and
destroying
that's
the
how they're-
Titanic.
And
Right,
that's
but
the
they-
reason they went down there.
But I'm pretty sure they've sent robots, I don't know, like some electronic or devices to get, sample from dirt from bottom of the ocean or from wreckage. They've done that before in the past. They've sent machineries. You don't have to send, like I said, a can, a tin foil can to the bottom of the ocean with 5 people inside to get sample of some,
Well, people
You
were
don't have to
paying a
do that.
large amount of money, but people were also paying a large amount of money to go down onto this, almost like a form of ocean tourism.
Yeah,
You know,
and it was
with-
$250,000, which is
Correct.
it's a ridiculous amount of money to get into that thing. So basically, again, it's for people living under a rock that are not following the news. What they think happened was that this thing imploded. It's basically an explosion, and everyone knows what that is, but inward.
From the inside, inward, right?
From the inside. And what we're going to end up talking about is risk taking, but very quickly, implosion happens very, very quickly. And it has to do with the pressure outside of a hull coming inward. You're building this thing basically very similarly to an airplane that is pressurized but is going up, where the pressure is less outside than it is inside. So you're pressurizing the hull of a airplane to be similar to the pressure outside. Now, the pressure at Earth is considered 1 atmosphere. As you go up, the atmosphere gets lower and lower. You get into space, it's 0 atmospheres, right? So you go from 1 atmosphere to nothing. As you go down below sea level, the amount of atmospheres increases because of the crush of the water. And it gets really big really quickly as you go down. And the depths that they went down, it's an enormous amount of pressure. And if you don't have that hull secured, if one little bolt is off, it's a complete disaster. And
Does it seem
there's no easy way to discuss this,
right?
so we might as well just kind of do it. You know what I mean? So I'm just gonna kind of read. I want to play a clip of
Right. What does it seem odd to you guys that was not tested before? I mean, tested without people inside of it?
I think it's gone
odd,
down
right?
before. It's gone down before, from what I understand.
Okay.
Not that one. I don't think that one has gone down before, but this company has sent ships before. If you've seen this ship that they sent down, it looks like a teardrop that you would see on the side of like a guy who's in prison who like draws a teardrop. It has what looks like an iris at the front of it, and then like a teardrop.
It looks like a soda can. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, with like a thing at the end of it. I don't know any other way to describe it other than a teardrop. But what I want to play is a couple of things. Go ahead, Suzanne.
Yeah, it's gone down at least 10 times.
This particular one?
This particular one, yes.
Okay, well.
And
I guess
I know that people have had safety concerns about it through the years, including Josh Gates, who does Expedition Unknown. I think he did like a test dive in it and had concerns. He's publicly come out expressing his concerns and said, listen, I'm not going to go down to the Titanic, which was going to be a huge story for him.
Do you know how
but he
far it's
chose not
gone?
to.
Before
It's
this
gone
one?
down to the Titanic at
This
least
thing?
10 times. This particular thing, yes.
Okay, well, it's made the trip, so maybe it's just got way too stressed. and
Or maybe
they
that
didn't
was
fix it or something.
yeah.
Perhaps it's not regulated. There was no
That was-
regulatory
okay.
body over
Yeah,
it.
maybe that was one more time, too many. Maybe that was a limit, right?
Yeah. Airplanes are like this too. You take it up multiple times, but you have to maintain it.
And they retire planes. They've retired planes.
And there's regulations on aircrafts.
This did not have that. So the couple of clips that I want to play first James Cameron, who has done this before, not on this particular
No, he has his own
sub.
vessel.
He's built his own things, as he will tell you many times if you ask him. He has also gone to the Mariana Trench, which is much deeper than this has gone. Mariana Trench is ridiculously deep. It's beyond anything you could possibly.
Well, let's see. The
imagine.
Titanic, what did they say, is like 2.5 miles down.
It's 13,000 feet.
Yeah.
and the Mariana Trench is 35,000 feet.
Wow.
So you're talking about nearly 3 times the depth.
Right.
And the crush amount of pressure at that depth is unfathomable. But here's James Cameron talking about the concerns he had about this particular trip.
Mhm.
This was such a preventable tragedy. We've never had a tragedy like this in the entire history of deep submergence, deep diving. You have these, highly certified systems like Alvin at Woods Hole, which Bob is very familiar with. Even the Russian submersibles that I dove with, every 5 years they had to be reclassified and recertified, and so on. And you have all these legitimate deep diving operations around the world, and even most of the tourist operations around the world use certification from, let's say, ABS, the American Bureau of Shipping. And this particular outfit didn't do that. I had deep concerns about the technology that they were using, composite fiber wound filament hull, which I don't believe has any place in deep submergence. And I know a thing or two about the engineering that goes into subs. I designed and built my own sub and went, at one point 10 years ago, went 3 times deeper than Titanic at the Challenger Deep. So it's all just engineering, and these are understood and known problems. The last thing somebody should be thinking about when they get into a sub to pay to go deep as a tourist or as a like a lay explorer, they shouldn't have to worry about the sub that they're in.
You got that right, James. You shouldn't have to worry about the sub that you're in.
No.
All right. So
which
very
there were
quickly
concerns from the, there was a father who took his 19-year-old son down here. They were both victims of this, obviously, but there was a lot of reports that the 19-year-old was scared to go.
That he didn't want to go. It was it was a Father's Day.
Father's Day gift.
Mm-hmm. That he did it for his Father's Day.
Yeah.
Very quickly from a cognitive perspective, because we are mental health professionals. An implosion happens when the hull cannot sustain the amount of pressure that's coming in from behind, from
the outside, right?
The pressure inside is breached.
Right. So that process takes about 1 millisecond.
So you're basically saying they did not suffer, like that.
Their brain couldn't process it. Our brain doesn't have time to process something that fast.
I don't know if they didn't suffer or not, but
I think
I guess the process of implosion takes 1 millisecond. The cognitive cycle of the brain. This is from a research study in 2011 by Maddle, colleague. The perception recognition of the brain, which means that the brain perceives something happening on an unconscious level, takes 80 to 100 milliseconds from the time of a stimulant. So 1 millisecond the implosion takes. The brain doesn't even process the perception of something for 80 to 100 milliseconds. The conscious perception of it is 200 to 280 milliseconds from the point of stimulus. And an action, in other words, a conscious action to respond to a stimulus.
Whatever reaction you have to the stimulus.
You have to that would be 60 to 110 milliseconds from the point of conscious perception.
Right. So it's not going to be for another 300, 350 milliseconds after.
So the total cognitive cycle is about 260 to 390 milliseconds. That thing took 1 millisecond.
1 millisecond, right.
So, we would hope that there was no suffering. Obviously, the brain did not have time to process it.
Right.
So,
but
it is tragic.
Right. But suffering, like Dimitri said, it's kind of subjective, right? Did they know they were lost, for a couple of days? Did they know the oxygen tank was going down? To me,
that's the question. That's the question. Did they
have to know. They had to know that they have little oxygen left, for example. They have meters.
Apparently the implosion happened.
It happened way
their
before
descent. It happened way before it happened Sunday.
It happened before that.
That's right. We found it a few days later. We don't know when it happened.
That's right. They believe that it happened as they were going down.
Yeah.
And it failed. I want to read a tweet by Ollie London, who is a TV reporter. Ollie London TV. I don't know if she's a reporter or not, but this is she's quoting a nuclear sub-officer, Dave Corley. She basically reiterated what I said about the cognitive cycle and then added, the air inside a sub has a fairly high concentration of hydrocarbon vapors. When the hull collapses, it behaves like a very large piston on a very large diesel engine. The air auto-ignites and an explosion follows the initial rapid implosion. A large blob of fat that would be humans incinerates and are turned to ash and dust quicker than you can blink your eye. So essentially what she's saying is that everyone in there was basically fried in about 1 millisecond. Yeah. So your not suffering thing probably holds.
There were also some evidence that came out yesterday that there were some sensors that had gone off to say that there was something happening, perhaps a crack in the hull, it was being breached, and there was some evidence to show that they attempted to ascend.
Okay, so that's we're going to get an expert coming in later on as a guest to talk about, he's a software engineer, to talk about, what could have gone wrong, some of the engineering, some of the software that might have been on that thing, because apparently they had a PlayStation controller running this thing. And I want to ask him all kinds of questions about that. So we're going to leave the technical stuff to him, but I want to talk about risk taking.
Would you guys do it?
No.
Forget about the dollar amount.
If you had the money, I wouldn't do that. I would go to space.
I would go to space as well, more so than going to the Titanic.
Only because that is.
We've been doing it for like so many years now.
I trust NASA.
Well, NASA isn't really sending them out anymore. Now it's Elon Musk, and now it's Boeing. They're the ones that are sending.
I don't trust Elon Musk, but I trust.
A lot of people do because they're going up.
If NASA was the one sending me, I would go with NASA.
Yeah,
even though they have a record of losing people, I would trust that they know what they're doing more than.
I think it's
plus it's something I'm more interested in. Well, that too, but I think it's more. It's also more interesting. So if I ended up in a fiery blaze, a mile above Earth, I would be more willing to do that than. Although you wouldn't die instantly like you would.
You know what? The ocean. I'm okay. I'm okay right here where I am on Earth. I'm good.
Well, let's talk about this risk taking thing, because maybe it's a personality issue.
Perhaps.
I like to feel when I'm walking that I'm walking on something. That's just me. That's just me.
So the research on risk taking is fascinating that I uncovered. The who and when of who takes risks. As you would expect, and I don't know if you would expect this, but men are much more risk takers than women.
No.
Super shocked by that.
Completely.
But there are domains to risk taking. So there's different kinds of risk taking. There's financial, recreational, ethical, stuff like that. Women tend to take more risks in social and career, whereas men take more financial, recreational, and ethical risks. But there's also a time-specific kind of risk-taking. So, when you're more hot, more affective, more passionate, you're going to take more risks at that time. And you may take more risks that have nothing to do with the thing that incited it. So things that are unrelated, like, sometimes people that get a bonus are going to go speeding right after they get a bonus, which has nothing to do with getting a bonus. So
it's unrelated. It's sometimes unrelated to the thing causing it.
Right. Now, I pose a question to you guys. Do you think that adolescents take more risks than adults?
Yeah. There's a plethora of reason why, we always say as you grow, from being a child to adolescent, you still in your formative years, your frontal lobe is still not fully developed. And your frontal lobe is where you get the filtering, right? You get disinhibited when you have a lesion in your frontal lobe. So that means
the impulse
you have
control.
No brake, right? It's an impulse control. You have no brakes. So that's what happens when elderly patients, when they have some TBI, for example, in that region, they start acting impulsively, either verbally or physically, being aggressive.
Or you'll see like hypersexuality that occurs
exactly
with nursing homes with dementia.
Exactly. So at adolescent teens, they don't have that part of their brain fully formed. So yes, I would say being impulsive, being reckless is part of growing up, right? That's why you say, oh, it's a kid or it's a teen, whatever.
So the answer to that is yes and no.
Okay.
They probably take risks
So-
in different ways than that of adults.
In affective decisions, in other words, emotional
Emotionally
decisions,
based.
yes, they
Right,
are
right.
more risky. But in decisions that are cold, in other words, that have no emotional attachment to them, they actually make decisions exactly the same way adults do. And this was proved in something called a Columbia card task, which is a task. I don't know if you're familiar with this, Suzanne, because this is in your realm,
Mhm.
testing, psychological testing. Do you want to describe what this is?
You have the results of it, so I'm going to let you go
Okay.
ahead and do that. But I
Okay,
do
so-
want to add something about the affectively based decisions when you're done with that.
Okay. So the Columbia card task, you get 32 cards and you turn over each card. There's a hot version, a cold version. The hot version is you turn over a card. And when you turn over a card, it's either a positive or negative card. If you turn over a positive card, you get money or points. And you choose whether or not you want to turn over another card. And if you turn over another positive card, you get more points, and it incentivizes you to turn over more cards. If you turn over a negative card, you lose more points than you potentially have gained. The round ends, and you choose to go on to the next round where you can earn more points, but also lose more points.
Similar to game shows and slot machines.
It's basically deal or no deal, actually, is what it
Deal or no
is.
deal.
It's essentially deal or no deal. If you know that. The cold test is you get the same 32 card format, but you choose ahead of time how many cards you want to open, and you don't get the immediate feedback. So you say, well, 32 cards, I want to open 18, and you don't get the immediate feedback. You just kind of open them then after that. So in the hot test, the adolescents were more impulsive, more risk taking.
Well, that would make sense. That would make sense.
Now, just to piggyback off of that, when we talk about these affectively based decisions or decisions based upon our emotional states, they've actually had brain imaging studies where they show the reasoning areas of your brain shut down and all of the emotional centers of your brain light up. So you are making irrational choices.
No.
And with adolescence, like Steph was saying, the frontal lobe, which controls all of those things, decision making, judgment, impulse control, all of that gets inhibited when we make emotionally based decisions, and it's still forming in adolescence. So they don't have anything to help counterbalance that the way adults kind of
Should.
Should do. So let's get into the personality, because this is I think where the money is, so to speak. No pun intended.
Pun intended, actually.
no pun intended, really. So as we just mentioned, risk taking decreases with age. Younger people, not just adolescents but adults, tend to take more risks with recreation and health and safety. Now that doesn't necessarily translate to what happened here, because I think most of the people on that sub were older. But it may, again, we don't know these people personally, and we don't really know their background. So we're not talking about the people on this sub specifically. These are just general frameworks of personality based on research. Okay, so this has nothing to do with those people on the sub. We don't have no idea who they are.
No.
From a personality standpoint. Okay. So personality traits that tend to be more risky.
I mean, can we guess? I mean, I don't know.
Do you want to guess? I have what I want to ask you is, from an organizational size perspective. So people that work in companies that are small companies, do they take more risks? Where do you think that they take more risks as far as health and safety? Do they take more or less risks with their health?
I would say probably more, right? Because they have to aspire to overdo or to overachieve.
Are we talking about just
limits.
General employees? Or are we talking about people who run these companies?
So the question is,
owners,
the question is, do people that work at smaller companies take more or less health risks? That's the question.
It could possibly be less, because they may not get the same type of benefits as people get with larger companies. It's possible.
So
I think it
people
can
with
go either way.
people
Yeah.
in smaller companies take higher health risks.
Hmm.
The question is now, do people in smaller companies take higher or lower risks with their safety?
Meaning, well, maybe that's where Susan's right. Maybe
Mhm.
because they don't have good benefit, they probably are more cautious with safety, right?
With their safety, that's correct.
Right.
Same with recreation. They take more caution with their recreation.
Right. They won't go bungee jumping or whatever you call it, or skydiving because hey, they might not be
Because
insured.
there's a
So,
risk.
yeah.
That's right. People with startups tend to take more risks with their health too. The theory behind this is that the pressure of being in a startup tends to be alleviated with the anxiety and the pressure of a startup tends to be alleviated with things like smoking because it's a calming effect of some kind. That's their
Or
that's
drinking.
their hypothesis or things like that. Yeah, drinking,
Right.
things
Right.
like that.
Self-medicated. Mhm.
Now, the thing that was the most interesting in this research was the domains of specific personality inventory stuff. And there's a research tool called the Neo Personality Inventory Revised, and it has multiple domains.
This is the one that's basically centered around the 5-factor model of personality, where you have 5 factors of openness, conscientiousness,
Mhm.
extroversion,
Correct.
agreeableness, and neuroticism, which is an older term, but
Correct.
it's still used in this domain.
Right. Have you ever used this
No.
before, Suzanne? Never?
No.
Right. So neuroticism.
The practice that in my practice, we don't do these types of assessments because I'm seeing people in the context of criminal evaluations. And so we use other assessments.
Okay. Are these personality tests or style, are they the same thing as what we call sometimes in organizational psychology, the archetypes, the archetypes model, based on Carl Jung, Jungian theories, where they give you the kind of style of person that you would be in what setting and what you'd be good for?
Well, with the Jungian theory, that's based upon like the Myers-Briggs type indicator, which is another
Right.
assessment that gets used. And like the assessment that Dimitri's talking about as well, a lot of this is used in vocational type settings where people are trying to figure out what kind of job they would be good
Right.
for, or training, however it goes. With Carl Jung, the archetypes, he does talk about introversion and extroversion, which is one of the factors that goes into this particular one that Dimitri's talking about, but it has other components to it as well.
Sure.
With regards to safety, okay, these are people that take more risks when it comes to their safety. All right. People that are more action adventure oriented.
I could see that. Yeah.
People that are openness to values, psychiatrically or psychologically liberal is the way it's described in the test. It's described as psychologically liberalism or tolerance to ambiguity. So the more tolerant you are to ambiguity, the more likely you are to be risky with your safety. A fast-paced life, excitement seeking, male sex, as we discussed. So that was it for safety. For recreation, again, action, adventure, explorer, openness to values, psychiatric or psychologically liberalism, tolerance to ambiguity, fast-paced life. These are all kind of similar, right? Excitement seeking,
Right.
male sex, and health. Openness to values, psychological liberalism, tolerance to ambiguity, fast-paced life, excitement seeking, male sex again, modesty, which is recreational risk, and this health risk, again, openness to values, psychological liberalism, tolerance to ambiguity, fast-paced life, excitement seeking, impulsivity, depression, what they call competence or self-efficacy in the test. Now, there's also the flip side of this. What people are less likely to seek safety risk? So these people are less likely to seek safety risk. People that are less competitive, people with high levels of anxiety, people that are more straightforward and have a higher morality, people that make more or less spontaneous decisions, people with altruism, higher altruism, self-discipline, people that are less likely to take recreational risks, people that are less competitive, more anxious. These all sound about right? More or less gregarious.
Well, it's kind of like exact opposite.
Achievement striving. These are the domains. People that are less likely to take health risks. Straightforward in morality, again. These are the domains. People that scored high in sympathy, dutifulness, and obligation. These are less likely to take health risks. And order and organization.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
Yes.
Well, we don't know, again, to go back to the beginning, we don't know what kind of people were in that sub. Right? We don't know.
And we're not talking about them.
We're not going to,
This is general risk taking.
In general, we know that people will take risks depending on the situations, but things like anxiety, empathy for others, sympathy, all of those things do come into play as to whether or not a person will engage in more risk-taking behavior. And like Dimitri said, there's different kinds of risks, right? You have health risk and whatnot. But the other thing I want to draw attention to is, we talked about the billionaires and we talked about quote unquote, the rich people risk, right? We're going down in a submarine. We're self-propelling down to the Titanic. And unfortunately, it ended very tragically and 5 people lost their lives. But on the other end of that spectrum, we also have hundreds of refugees that were lost off the coast of Greece, and people were missing, and they're still missing. And people were heard screaming, hanging on to things for dear life. But those refugees, those hundreds of refugees, also took a risk, right? They wanted a better life for themselves. And that also ended in tragedy as well. And so we see this dichotomy of, the billionaires risk-taking versus the less economically fortunate, less financially fortunate risk-taking. And the media has not given much attention to those refugees that have been lost off the coast of Greece. But unlike the billionaires and how we talked about their cognitive processing, the people off the coast of Greece were well aware of what was happening as they died.
Yeah.
And some are continue to be missing.
And you're right on that spectrum. You could actually, Dimitri mentioned recreational risk and also safety risk, right? You can see in both incidents, one of them was purely recreational. There was no need for it. There was nothing needed to be done. Just like, I'm gonna pay for that, right? And the other end of the spectrum with the refugees, there was a safety risk taking, right? But because it needed to, like you mentioned, looking for a better life, they had to. It wasn't a choice. And you're right. And it's kind of, I won't say, I don't know the media logic behind covering the billionaires more than the refugee. I would never understand it. But if you want to put in a balance, it does sound like the scale, tip towards more the refugees dying at sea, right? Hundreds of them dying at sea, than 5 people paying for an adventure, if you will. I don't get the reasoning behind the media coverage. I don't think you could ever explain to me why it warranted so much attention compared to the refugees.
I wanna be a billionaire so freaking bad. Buy all of the things I never had. I wanna be on the cover of Forbes magazine, smiling next to Oprah and the Queen.
All right. Our guest today, Travis Jennings from the Bar Banter podcast, which is an excellent podcast. If you guys have not heard of this, you guys need to listen to this. They talk about all kinds of random stuff. It's absolutely hilarious. I think the last podcast that they just put out this week, they were talking about which fish dishes should be abolished. And the only correct answer to that is every single fish dish that's cooked should be completely abolished. The only thing that should be allowed is sushi and Nova Locks on bagels. I don't care what anyone has to say. They're all wrong.
I delete all of them.
They should all be deleted, except those 2 things. That's my take on that, and I will die on that hill forever.
My Jewish ancestors definitely agree about the lox and bagels for sure. That one of my favorite things ever.
But we are not here to talk about fish. Travis is also a software engineer, so we brought him here because we wanted to continue the discussion on this sub disaster. But before we get into that, I want you to tell us whether or not I actually introduced you appropriately, Travis. Go ahead and tell us who you are and whether or not I did that correctly.
Yeah, you hit the nail pretty much on the head. I like to tell people that the Bar Banter podcast, it's an unscripted comedy podcast that tackles everything in life, from the tiny little absurdities to like some of the latest pop culture trends. So we have a very broad spectrum of topics that we talk about. Things like, what fish dish should we ban? Other things such as, what would be the best kid/horror film combo? Or, I don't know, which cereal box character would be the best to rob a bank? Stuff that stuff that people get very passionate about for no real reason, and it's a fun, safe environment that we can let off steam, hang out with the boys. There's no like, oh, my dog's gonna breathe into mic, and it's just dumb stuff you want to talk to your friends about, and you can keep the conversation going for hours on end.
I love it. And you just record it. It's like guys having fun, just record it.
Yeah,
having fun talking about random
cool.
stuff.
And or gals. My mom has been on a couple of times. She loves it. She's our biggest fan. So
let me ask you, do you guys drink while you record, or is it like,
yeah, oh yeah,
okay,
oh yeah,
okay.
we start off every show with what are you drinking?
That's exactly what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
I was literally going to ask you what you're drinking right now.
There may or may not be coffee in here.
There or coffee with something else. Who knows?
Right.
I am drinking just a bottle of water.
Yeah, I'm doing water for the next 5 hours, so I can,
Drink
fix
again.
all the cells I killed last night.
Yeah, you're hydrating for tonight.
Yeah,
That's what I'm going with. Okay.
Yeah.
On a Sunday. Okay, so and on a more somber note, you do know the story of the 5 people that were lost on the submersible going down to the Titanic. What I wanted to ask you as a software engineer is, if you were building this thing, or you are on the team building this thing, what would you put as far as the equipment or the software on, or what kind of software could we have expected to have on something like this going down there?
Other than a video game controller.
Well, I'm going to get into the video game controller, but I
Yeah.
just want to know, like, what are they looking at down there?
maybe something that you don't have to put people in it, right?
Yeah. If Elon can send an unmanned rocket to basically the moon or upper orbit, we could send unmanned vehicles down there. We'll get into that as innovation as well. So from what I read, from what I gathered, the software and the hardware that was needed to run the submersible was there. All of the sensing equipment, it was the pressure sensors, the electrical circuits, the different outputs, the calibration and the data processing, all of that stuff was in the submersible. You have to remember that these guys, while they probably cut some corners, they did have a working submersible that made this trip, I think 4 or 5 times before, something like that, where it had already happened. So I think from a software perspective and a data perspective, they were okay. It probably wasn't state of the art, but we also made it to the moon on less processing power than what's in your cell phone, right? So it can be done. It is entirely plausible that they had the right stuff to make this a repeatable and economically friendly venture, right? It's possible. So I don't know if that answers your question. I can go into more about what probably went wrong from that end, but
I'm going to catch you at economically. Why these 4 billionaires would worry about going on cheap, not well done or done enough so we can go there, not sort of the art kind of, vessel.
Well, so there's an old saying, and you guys being medical practitioners know this. It's the triangle. You can have something fast, you can have something cheaper, you can have something good, but you can only have 2 of those things, right? So they wanted to go fast because if Elon can, again, I'm going to use Elon a lot because it's a very easy reference. It doesn't mean I necessarily like the guy.
Yeah, we use him a lot.
Yeah, it's easy. He's top of mind. He's everywhere. if Elon can be the first person to kind of start this, upper atmosphere tourist venture, it only stands to reason that there's going to be an underwater version so people can dive down to the depths, and there will be a race to see which billionaires can make this venture happen. So if you want to go fast, that's fine. You can go fast, but the equipment and the engineering and all that other stuff has to be good, or you have to build it super, super, super cheap. And that, I believe, is pretty much what they wanted to do, is they wanted to get, be the innovators, so to speak, and get down there first to capitalize and be first on the market.
Yeah. But why would you choose cheap over good? Or did they choose cheap over good?
They absolutely chose cheap over good. And they chose, I think they tried to choose all three, and that's what you can't have, right? That you can't have cheap, good, and fast. You have to have one of those, has to be either slow, expensive, or bad, right? You can't have all three.
Yeah.
Sure. When you hear about the description of what it was, it sounds like it was put together from pieces from wish.com, basically. I mean, that's really what it sounded like.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it looks like a soda can, a tinfoil. Right.
And I don't know how much you guys dove into the actual engineering of the submersible yet, but that pill shape is the correct shape, right? The soda can shape, because the at depths at that level, you are wanting to make sure you have equal pressure around every single part of the ship, or else you have weak spots. And the object, or the shape that would have equal pressure, is a sphere. You can't really have a sphere. That doesn't really work well. So what's the next best thing is a cylinder, which kind of looks like a tin can. So I think the design itself was fine, and that's what a lot of other submersibles look like. But I think, to your point, that they used secondhand parts to be cheap. They used secondhand parts that may be beyond their life cycle. I think they got some stuff from Boeing, from not their scrap pile, but it was no longer rated for flight. So they're like, oh yeah, we'll buy that off of you. And they chose cheap, they chose fast, and they tried to choose good, but because it wasn't good, it was a catastrophic failure. So it was bad. And that's where it flipped.
Yeah, I think they dug out something. Yeah.
So there's been a lot made about the PlayStation controller,
right?
That now I quickly, but the PlayStation controller was controlling it from the surface. It was controlling it from inside.
It was controlling it from inside.
And how exactly does that work?
Yeah, it's actually relatively simple. I don't know if she's done barking. Are you done barking?
It's just a sound effect. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. A PS5, a Logitech controller is basically just metal parts hitting a sensor and electrical data going back to some sort of motor or software that interprets that electrical signal. So very simple controllers can be used to, I don't know, turn on the left motor, turn on the right motor to kind of guide that submarine. And you don't need something that is, the controller itself doesn't need to be super great, right? I still play my old N64 and I can still get by trying to drift on Mario Kart, even though it's leaning to the left. But my point is that the controller itself is fine. It's the software that's interpreting the data that needs to be pristine. So if you have decent software that can interpret the inputs of the controller, you're actually okay, even if the controller is off the shelf. Like, it's okay.
But there's a certain precise nature of turning something that it's not large, but turning something that detailed in an environment where there's literally no light. Right. And the only light you have is the light that you brought with you. And you're not looking out a window, right? You're looking at it on a screen. And the screen, I don't know, is in infrared, or how would the screen look? It's not going to look in color, right?
I honestly couldn't find. So when I started to dive into this, the Oceangate website is not accessible. I don't know if you guys have tried to go to it recently.
No.
Can't get
No.
to it. They
I did.
basically
It's not accessible at
you
all.
can't get to it. It's gone. So I don't know. I haven't been able to see exactly what the screen looks like. From what I understand, a lot of it is out of that porthole. So they're just kind of like using.
They're looking straight out.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's even worse, right? Because you're looking at darkness with just a floodlight, essentially.
Right.
I don't know if it's a floodlight, but it's basically just light emanating from the ship.
Right.
You know, at least in space, there's light because there's a sun and there's stars. In here, there's nothing. It's just the light that you brought with you, right? So you're looking out a porthole at nothing except a light that's in front of you. The control that you need to have, I would imagine, cannot be done with this little joystick. Wouldn't you need something that you could hold, like, you know, with your palm, like around?
It depends on what you're trying to
Would you like more of an
accomplish.
Atari joystick? Is that what you're looking for?
That's what I was trying to do. I was trying to keep from saying something dirty. But yes, an Atari
like an
joystick
Atari
would-
joystick.
Yeah, an Atari joystick would be.
If you are James Cameron, right, and you're trying to go down there and you might want some sort of arm, right, to reach out and slowly grab something and turn it over and bring it back without damaging a lot. You want to get super close and maybe go inside the Titanic where there's lots of crevices. Yeah, you need the most sensitive thing you can get, or else there's a failure. If you are I say just because getting down to that depth is difficult in general. But if you're just navigating the ocean underwater, it's a gigantic piece of real estate. Like, you're not going to be having to bob and weave in and out of things. You're just triggering this thing to go slowly forward and then coast and then maybe kind of take a right turn. Oh, hey, there's the Titanic. Everyone wave. Okay, let's go back up. So I think for the purposes of what they were trying to accomplish, the Logitech joystick or the Logitech controller is fine. Like, now the larger problem is it maybe indicative of the fact that they were going cheap and that the rest of the sub might be cheap. Yeah, that, like, if the Logitech controller was the only thing on there, I think the ship would have been fine, right? If the rest of the engineering, if they didn't use other parts from old aircraft, would have been fine. Logitech would be fine. But because it's I would question it trying to get into that sub. I would question the rest of the sub.
So do you think what happened might have been a chain of events, meaning the implosion did something might have happened before that? Let's say crack. Let's say they hit something and then change the form of the ship, or is it just purely being too deep and the pressure was too much to overcome? Because it had
a design flaw, in other words.
Right.
I mean, it's been down before, though.
Before. So my question is, something probably must have happened, right, to make it imperfect, right, or change the state of the heart or the shape of the ship or something like that. I don't think it just happened from just happening, the implosion.
Well, so we'll never actually know, so I'm only speculating. Based on what I know from, like, carbon fiber, right? It's been proven. I read a paper the other day that says carbon fiber can withstand that amount of pressure and could be, emphasis on the could, a viable material to use on a submersible down 3,500 feet. Is that what it was? Something like that? Meters, yeah. So the guy, I forgot his name, the owner, was like, yes, we can use carbon fiber. It's been rated, it's fine. But he got secondhand stuff. It's been stressed already. It's already been under this pressure. So, and then they went down 5 times. They're probably not doing we know they weren't doing the diligent testing. We know they weren't doing all of the, I don't want to say red tape, but they weren't going through all of the different procedures needed to actually make sure that the sub was safe. He admitted that. So yeah, probably by the 5th or 6th time, the material itself was so weak that as soon as it got down to a depth, I don't say there was there probably wasn't like an accident, right? I don't think something just broke through. I think it was just, it's the material's old and worn and tired and just collapsed in on itself.
that was an implosion that Travis did. Like, is that it sounds like
Amazing.
Sucking sound.
Yeah, like a
That's it.
slurping. It's basically just all of everything.
The new
just getting-
implosion noise.
There's a new conspiracy theory that says that the U.S. government actually heard the sound and kept it a secret.
No,
That's
because
the new conspiracy theory going around.
that is highly unlikely, because did they hear a sound? Entirely possible. There are so many sounds in the ocean.
Exactly. That's
Right?
why it's a conspiracy theory, right?
Correct.
Right.
They're
There's
not
no
talking
way.
about those sounds they were hearing every 30 minutes either anymore.
Jeez.
Right.
That fact has just kind of gone away, but
Right. All right. So
Yeah.
I want to play these couple of clips. These clips are from a YouTube channel called Fleet Files, which is a channel that does maritime videos. And this video was actually uploaded 2 months ago, so it actually has nothing to do with this issue. It's a video that they uploaded. The channel describes themselves as a channel that explores the intricacies of the world at sea and the daily lives of sailors to the latest advancements in technology. So they are a maritime channel. So if you want to check them out, it's called Fleet Files, @Fleet Files on YouTube. So these are a couple of clips from this video. This is a clip of what happens to a hull when it reaches a submarine hull when it reaches crush depth. Crush depth is the depth that a ship reaches when the outer pressure of the water is more than the pressure that the actual structure can take. So this is what happens.
The submarine disintegrates into scrap metal when submerged to crush depth. Pipes and fittings would fail as the submarine got closer to its crush depth, and then the hull would groan and creak before imploding and killing everyone on board in a matter of seconds. Instead of slowly seeping in, the water rushes in, either trapping the air within in a bubble at one end of the boat or generating so much heat that the boat implodes and kills everyone inside. Body parts and fuel oil are among the debris that rises to the top. Very chilling.
You got that right.
Yeah.
And then
God.
I wanted to play a second clip, which is even worse than the first one, of what actually happens to people inside of this submarine
Oh boy.
when this happens. And then I want to ask you, the reason I'm playing this not because I want to be morbid and gross. I actually have a real question about this, but I wanted to play it for context so that the question makes sense. So this is what happens to the crew.
If a pressure hull implodes at a depth of 2,000 feet, when the air pressure is around 60 atmospheres, the internal pressure will rapidly climb from 14.7 to nearly 875 psi. It would feel like being inside the cylinder of a diesel engine just as the compression stroke begins in the areas of the submarine where large volumes of air are trapped. Everything combustible would go up in flames until a massive wall of water crashed down and put an end to the blaze. Anybody unlucky enough to be still alive would be severely hurt by the water's impact and wouldn't have time to suffer the effects of oxygen poisoning or anything else. Human tissues are mostly fluid-filled, making them difficult to compress. An individual's lungs and sinuses would be crushed instantly, and the tremendous shock would knock them out. Even more dangerous would be the sudden onslaught of water from the ocean, the vessel's bulkheads and decks, as well as the weight and speed with which various pieces of machinery and engines would hurl towards the crew.
Right.
Yikes.
yeah.
So we talked about earlier the cognitive cycle, which is it takes 80 to 100 milliseconds for the brain to perceptually
Perceive something.
recognize
Mhm.
a stimulus unconsciously. Then consciously, it takes 200 to 280 milliseconds for it to consciously recognize a stimulus, and then another 60 to 110
To react.
milliseconds to react. So the total cycle is about 260 to 390 milliseconds. The implosion takes about 1 millisecond. So once the whole thing starts, it's basically it's over, and that's what it sounds like.
So you're saying that clip, like the guy doing the the voiceover, are they just wanting to be morbid, because that would have never happened to anybody. They would not know
No.
what's happened.
Well, they recorded
No.
this months before this event actually even occurred. So their recording is totally unrelated.
It
to
has
what-
nothing to do with
Yeah.
this incident.
No.
What they're talking about is a submarine that reaches a crush depth. And the reason they did it this way is when I didn't play this clip, but later on in the video, there's a story about a U.S. Navy ship that lost power because of a failure inside their vessel, and it began to descend. U.S. or submarines have engines that force them up, that keep them at depth. If you lose engines, it sinks. It's made out of titanium, right? It sinks like anything else. And if they lost their engines and the thing just kept sinking, those things are not built to go down to depths of the Titanic. They're built for 2,000 feet of depth. Once you get down to a certain depth, those things fail. And what happened to the ship was it got, it lost its engine, it started to descend, and it got to a depth where the submarine didn't get there, but it went slowly, right? So these people had time.
Okay.
They heard it, right? So my question to you, Travis, is, once this thing starts, it's over. But from a software perspective, would there have been a piece of software on there or a sensor that could have warned them?
It's hard to answer your question. Yes, there's absolutely pressure sensors on there, right? And that's how they can tell at least how far down they are, what the pressure is at the current depth. What you're asking for is there a warning for an inevitable collapse, right?
Correct.
And the amount of sensors you would need to have on something like that to be able to monitor every square inch or every square millimeter for any sort of imperfection that might compromise the hull or might, just be able. It's hard to say, and that's why these things have got to be engineered so precisely so you don't have to have those sensors, right? If you've done the engineering correctly, if you take the time and you spend the money, unfortunately, to get it right, I don't want to say the first time, but like the 100th time, you don't have to worry necessarily about that. Like I liken it to either Star Wars or Star Trek, right? Where you've got all of these crazy sensors letting you know exactly what's going on in every single part of the ship at every single inch. And that kind of technology, it's probably out there, but it's not necessarily feasible. And I'd rather go the engineering route and make sure that it's passed all of the safety and all of the red tape and it's gone through all of its paces to know that this thing is good. And then after 5 trips, you got to scrap it because we know at 6th trip or at the 8th trip, it's going to collapse, right? And that way you do it at 6 and you never actually even reach the 8th trip. So could there be software? Possibly. It probably isn't feasible and it probably isn't the right solution for what you're asking about, if that makes sense.
Well, I guess what I was asking is, if they got to a certain level and this thing just started going off saying, you can't go any further.
Probably.
I guess it's a Star Trek kind of technology.
If it was, it would just be about the amount of pressure that's on the outside of the hull, which they have those sensors. But you have to remember, what we assume happened is they never even reached the depth that they were trying to attain. So there's no alarm that would have gone off. The alarm would have gone off if they were going down to the Marianas Trench, right? And they went below the Titanic depth where they didn't think they could get to. So there's no alarm that would have gone off.
Well, no,
I think there was something that went off though, because there was some evidence that showed that they tried to ascend at some point based upon the debris field that was found.
Okay.
But what those sensors were, we don't know.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is there had to have been something, or I guess there didn't have to be something. It could have just been structurally unsound and then just collapsed.
Right,
but that could have just been like a bolt was loose this particular time.
Or they forgot to do a bolt, which is what I heard.
Or they forgot to do a bolt, and maybe there's a sensor in there that says, hey, this bolt is loose, you can't do this.
I mean, that's possible, right? That there are parts of it that say there's something wrong. But if I'm talking specifically about, because you don't necessarily know if 17 out of 18 bolts, which I think is what they were saying they were doing anyway, if that would make a difference or not. You haven't tested it. So there's no sensor to put on there because they didn't go through the rigorous testing, because that's,
I mean, they're not regulated, so they don't have to go through all of the hoops like the space program is doing, like Elon Musk, like Boeing, etc.
I assume they heard the creaking, right? The video even talked about hearing the creaking. Something was like clearly, maybe there's a crack in the glass, you know, on the outside, and you see it in the movies, it kind of spider webs across.
Right.
Like, oh man, and then it's like they're like,
Right.
go up, and then
It's
instantly
instant.
gone.
Yeah.
Like they saw it coming. So it wasn't something that happened without just having a casual conversation, right?
Yeah.
Right. They probably saw it within seconds, though. I would
The
assume.
warning would have been too late at that point anyway,
Right.
because of how far they were under and the amount of pressure.
Yeah.
All right. So we're not going to end this way because this is just
Chilling.
to end this
Yeah.
way. So we're going to end
Without a
on
doubt.
a much happier note. We're going to play a game with you that we like to play with our guests called Psyched Up or Psyched Out.
Let's do it.
It's sort of like the game that you guys play on your podcast, which is Would You Rather? Where you guys you guys give each other I guess you guys use ChatGPT to do this. You guys give each other would you rather be this or would you rather be that?
Which, shout out to ChatGPT, because I was starting to run out of would you rather questions. Like, we had done it 20 episodes or so without it. And I'm like, I can only use the same thing so many times. And I was like, let's just ask ChatGPT. And lo and behold, it gave me like 30 fresh new ones. So like,
That's
exactly
nice.
Yeah. Well,
like,
Awesome.
for all the flack it gets.
Yeah.
It was
I mean,
super helpful.
We might have to do that for the mental health tip of the day.
No,
I think we're going to have to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually.
We relied on
use
Alexa the other time.
Yeah. And she was helpful though. She was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have to do that. So Psyched Up or Psyched Out? I think you know the way this works. So here we go. Your friend Elon, but this is a shout out to him. Would you be willing to spend $44 billion on an app to make yourself feel more popular? Psyched Up or Psyched Out?
Psyched out.
Really?
Yeah.
You
I'm
you got something else to do with $44 billion?
Yeah, and I'm pretty I don't want to say I'm pretty popular already, but I'm kind of a big deal. No, I like my close circle of friends, so we're good.
Okay, all right. People that
go
leave
next.
their trash at their seat at the end of sporting events instead of throwing it out.
I don't like that, so I'm gonna go, I guess, psyched out.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's the proper word.
not okay. That's
Not okay. It's terrible.
Banned from the stadium.
Wow. That's a bit aggressive.
I agree with that.
Be a good person. Like, it's not hard.
That's right. Yeah. Don't make the people that clean up the stadium's job harder. Spending billions of dollars on a rocket that looks like
a
penis.
I'm all for the psyched up. Let's go. Especially because from the interview where I'm not an astrophysicist, so I don't know if this is true or not. I do know in space, you don't need the normal rocket ship shape because there's no air pressure around it. There's no air in general. So you don't need that shape. So if you're doing it just to be kind of funny and you have the money to make it look like a penis, I say go for it.
What Boeing's
In
looks like.
space, in space, they can't hear you jerk off.
You might be right.
Yeah.
That's a hypothesis for sure.
I think our clean program has jumped the shark.
It's totally jumped the shark. You have led that path.
3 12-hour days in Disney parks in August with 3 children.
Out. Psych out. No. Unsubscribe. Please.
What if you're drinking around the world in Epcot, though?
No, because I don't know about you guys. I get even hotter when I drink. I feel like, no, that is my nightmare. I have 2 kids. I'm not taking them to Disney until they can kind of like
do it
fend for themselves a little bit. Like, no, absolutely not.
Smart. Okay.
In December or January.
Right.
Okay. People that start sentences with like or so.
I would like to be in the middle because there's something.
That's not the way this game works.
I know.
I'm
going to psyched neutral.
Or you're psyched out.
I'll go psyched up because while it can be annoying, there is something to be said about needing to prime your brain in order to form your sentence, unless you're actively working. If you're giving a presentation, psyched out. Normal conversation, psyched up. It's fine. I get it.
I like
I
it.
have to edit out so many likes and ums on our podcast. It's fine.
So this will be this will be the last one of this group, and then we'll rapid fire the last one. Day drinking while lounging in a bay of water.
Psyched up. Assuming
Wow.
I don't have kids, I'm psyched. Yeah, give me.
Yeah.
I'm there for it.
Yeah, we have very different tastes apparently on this one. Okay.
I will say, would I
Steph and I
rather
are there with
be-
you.
I'm right there with you.
Will I do that? Yes. Will I enjoy it? Yes. Would I rather be not in a hot environment and day drinking? Yes. I would rather be in an air conditioned environment and day drink. So, but
Yeah,
if we're
me
going to
too.
a lake, I'm there for it.
If you're on the water, there's a breeze.
If you know
usually,
water,
so-
Right.
yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
Okay. All right, and the final group of psyched up or psyched out. This is the risk-taking group. Rapid fire, psyched up or psyched out. Going down in a sub or a submarine.
I'm psyched up about that.
wait, after
Seriously?
what happened last week?
After
really?
what we
Yeah.
just talked
We
about.
just spent 20
Yeah.
minutes on that.
Yeah. I'm
Would you go down to the Titanic in a submarine that was self-propelled down? Where you had to
Uh,
sink?
I mean, yeah, because every other time that people have gone down there, it's been fine, right? I'm not going to
Okay.
let one tiny little catastrophic accident, hearts go out to the actual people. But like, yeah, I would vet it first. I would make sure like I'm not going to go down, but like I'd pull a James Cameron, right? He did it 4 or 5 times and he's fine. I'm psyched up. Let's go. I want to go
All
see
right.
it.
Space.
Psyched up. Let's go. I'm down for the adventure.
All right. Safari in Africa.
Psyched up. As long as I'm got enough bug spray, because I will get malaria. I got sweet blood. They will eat me alive.
Okay. Antarctica.
Probably psyched out for that one.
What's the difference?
It's there's nothing there. Like it's just I've seen ice, right? I don't know what's I've done that. I haven't seen wild animals that much. I haven't seen what's below the sea. I haven't seen what the earth looks like from space. I've seen ice. It's fine.
Can't see anything below the sea. It's pitch black down
Well, there would be a
That's the
light.
light.
They've seen the
Oh,
Titanic.
God. Okay.
Like it's a thing.
Well,
Around the world in a Karak ship in the 16th century.
Out. No. Psych out. No.
All right.
I'll get scurvy real quick.
And the,
I don't like
and the
orange
last-
juice.
and the last one, climbing Mount Everest.
Psych out. No. Only because of if I'm psych up if I was able to get my equipment back. Because while I'm not like a super diehard conservative conservationist, the amount of stuff that's up on top of Mount Everest right now, because it takes too much effort to get it back, because of that
bodies.
reason, I'd be out. But if it was easy to get the stuff back down,
This isn't an if thing. This is a psyched up or psyched out.
that's why. Well, then I'm out. I'm
You
out.
need a qualifier. Yeah.
Okay. It sounds like you're a warm weather kind of guy. Because you said no to the 2 cold weather ones.
I like the cold. I don't like freezing temperature ones.
Okay. All right.
I don't want to go to Antarctica when it's negative a bajillion degrees.
You don't
below
want to go hang
zero.
out with the penguins in the ice and everything. No.
you can see
there are-
penguins. You can see
there are
penguins
tr-
other places.
Yeah, there's tropical penguins.
Go to
That's a thing.
SeaWorld? What?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Travis. Thank you very much for joining us. Everybody check out the Bar Banter podcast. Give us your socials real quick before we get you out of here.
I gotta look them up real quick because I don't know them off the top of my head. I have them written down somewhere.
Thank you for being prepared for this, by the way. I
Oh my
appreciate that.
God. You're so rude.
He's about as prepared as we are, though, Dimitris.
We do appreciate that.
I had everything else up. I had my elevator speech up. I had all of the other things up. I don't have. We're probably the _ bar banter at everything else. Probably the _ bar banter is usually, if you type that in, you'll find us. Either Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And anywhere you get your podcasts.
Awesome. Check out the Bar Banter podcast on all the places you get your podcasts. Thank you, Travis. And
Thank you.
Thank you guys for having me.
I'll see you guys around.
Yeah, that was fun.
Mental health tip of the day time.
Day full of hiccups? Need a shake-up? Listen up. It's Dr. Big and Dr. DeGraff's mental health tip of the day.
As usual, our mental health tip of the day is brought to you by nobody.
Yep.
Right?
Nobody.
Sadly, nobody.
Sadly, nobody.
Anybody wants to love us. We'll
One
take
day
some
it'll
sponsors.
come. Maybe that should be the mental health tip of the day.
Be
That we should
patient.
make like Elsa and let it go. But no, we will keep mentioning it. But the mental health tip of the day actually today is, you guys want to take it? Or you want me to do it?
No, go for it.
Go for it.
Okay. This may not be feasible for some people, and we will acknowledge that fully, but the mental health tip of the day today is to disconnect. And we mean that from a technical standpoint. We are way too connected to cell phones, and I am fully aware that we're saying this on a podcast, which is a technology podcast that you're probably listening to on your phone through speakers of some kind, either through your headphones or through your car or something like that. But maybe, after you listen to this podcast, you turn your phone off.
Wait, hold on. I'm going to say that differently. After you listen to the podcast, you like it, you share it, you give us a feedback, then you can turn off your phone.
Then you can put on Do Not Disturb, yes.
Yeah.
That's right. Maybe you disconnect from your phone for a little bit and you put it away for 6-8 hours, maybe even an entire day, and just kind of relax from it and find something else to do. Go watch a movie, have a cup of coffee. Just don't do technology for a little bit, because technology, as we've mentioned before, I believe, has increased our attachment to anxiety and has caused us to increase our levels of anxiety with all the notifications and need to check our social medias and our emails and work more than we generally have worked in the past, because we tend to bring work home with us.
It's harder to relax and put your mind at ease.
And mindfulness is one of the things that we try to stress in our practices. But if we are constantly looking at our phone every 5 seconds, then that's hard to do. So if we just kind of turn the thing off and not just put it on vibrate, because that may even be worse, but actually turn it off, make it a brick, and then go, put it away so that we can't turn it back on, you'll find that you'll feel a little bit better. Yeah,
I'll even add, it's totally okay to be unreachable. It's okay to be off the grid for a few hours, meaning not getting texts and phone calls, and people can wait on you. People don't have to get the answer from you right away, right? So it's okay not to be reachable for a few hours.
If you're not working on the weekends, the work emails can wait.
Exactly.
Go watch a movie. It's the summertime. There's a bunch of
Tons
great
of movies out.
I just watched The Flash yesterday. It was a good movie.
Oh,
It
was
was
it good?
such a great movie. Yes, I
liked
saw that the other day.
So, so go watch a movie. Just turn the phone off for a little bit. Anyway, thank you to Travis Jennings for joining us today. We didn't really even get to everything we wanted to talk about, but we'll get to it at some point.
We'll save it for next week.
Thanks, everyone. Remember
Thank you, guys.
to like, share, subscribe, and again, more importantly, write a written review. Like us or hate us. Tell us what you think. Tell us what we can improve. Tell us what we like about us in a written review.
All right.
We greatly appreciate that.
See you guys next time.
See ya. All right. Take care.
Bye.
The previous podcast represented the individual opinions of Dr. Dimitri Bick, Dr. Stefan de Graaf, and the guests. It should not have been taken as medical advice or an establishment of standard of care. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements. Please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions.